I ate ramen noodles for dinner 212 nights in a row. Not because I liked them, because they cost 39 cents a pack at the Dollar General on Chapman Highway, and 39 cents was the difference between eating and not eating when you made $16 an hour and gave half of it to your ex-wife so she wouldn't drag you back to court. I know the exact number because I kept a calendar on the wall of my rented room above Hernandez Family Laundromat in Knoxville, Tennessee. One of those free calendars from the auto parts store with pictures of classic cars on it. January was a 1967 Corvette, and I put an X through every day like a prisoner counting down a sentence. Except prisoners know when they're getting out. I didn't know anything except that the dryers downstairs stopped rumbling at 11 p.m. and started again at 6 a.m. and the vibration rattled the glass of water on my nightstand all night, every night for an entire year. My name is Marshall Dalton. I was 37 years old, sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a room that smelled like fabric softener and mildew, working as a technician for a company I used to compete against, and I hadn't seen my children in 19 days because my ex-wife kept canceling my weekends with excuses that got thinner every time. Shepard was 9. Wren was 6. Their faces were my phone wallpaper, and some nights that screen was the only light in the room. 11 months earlier, I had owned a house, a company, a savings account with $62,000 in it, a marriage that I thought was difficult but survivable. I had all of it, and then I had none of it, and the distance between everything and nothing turned out to be one sentence from my wife's mouth and my signature on a piece of paper. Sign the papers, or I'll make sure you never see your kids again. I signed. But before I tell you what happened after, before I tell you about the knock on my door that changed everything, I need to tell you about my grandfather. Because this story doesn't start in a room above a laundromat. It starts in a coal mine in Harlan County, Kentucky, 60 years ago, with a man named Amos Dalton, who spent his whole life underground and somehow saw further than anyone I've ever known. Amos Dalton was born in 1925 in a hollow outside Harlan, Kentucky, the kind of place where the mountains close in on both sides, and the sun only hits the valley floor for about 4 hours a day. His father was a miner. His grandfather was a miner. His great-grandfather probably would have been a miner if he hadn't died of typhoid before he was old enough to hold a pickaxe. Amos went into the mines at 16. By 25, he was a crew foreman. By 40, he was running operations at the Eastover Mining Company's No. 6 shaft, the deepest and most productive coal seam in Harlan County. He worked underground for nearly 50 years, breathing coal dust, crawling through tunnels, managing men who risked their lives, every shift for wages that barely covered rent. He retired in 1990. He was 65 years old with black lung, a bad knee, and a pension that paid $1,100 a month. He lived in a small clapboard house on 40 acres of hillside outside Harlan, drove a 1978 Ford pickup that he kept running through sheer stubbornness and baling wire, and wore the same Carhartt jacket for so long that the lining disintegrated, and he just kept wearing the shell. Everyone in Harlan County thought Amos Dalton was a poor man who'd worked himself half to death for nothing. They were wrong. My father, Ray Dalton, was Amos's only child, and he was everything Amos wasn't. Loud where Amos was quiet, reckless where Amos was deliberate, gone where Amos was steady. Ray left my mother when I was 4 years old. Just walked out one morning in 1990, said he was going to get cigarettes and drove to Florida. Classic, right? Like a bad joke that isn't funny when it's your father who's telling it. Amos never forgave him. Never spoke his name again. But he didn't let his son's failure poison his grandson. Starting the summer I turned 6, 1992, my mother would drive me from Lexington to Harlan and drop me off at Amos's house for 2 months. Every summer, from 6 to 16, I lived with that man on that hillside. He taught me everything. How to wire a circuit, how to sweat a copper pipe, how to rebuild a carburetor with nothing but hand tools and patience, how to read a man's character by watching how he treated people who couldn't do anything for him, how to work until the work was done, not until you felt like stopping. A man's hands tell his story, he used to say, holding up his own, thick and scarred and permanently darkened by decades of coal dust. You can lie with your mouth, Marshall, but you can't lie with your hands. They show what you've done and what you're willing to do. I started my HVAC company, Dalton Climate Solutions, in 2014 when I was 28. Built it from nothing. One truck, one set of tools, working 16-hour days in Tennessee summers where the heat index hit 110 and the crawl spaces under houses were hotter than that. By 2023, I had 4 trucks, 6 employees, and contracts with 3 property management companies across Knox County. Not a fortune, but a living. A real one, built with my hands the way Amos taught me. Amos died in March of 2009. I was 23. I drove to Harlan for the funeral, stood in the cemetery on the hillside behind the Baptist church, and watched them lower the toughest man I'd ever known into the ground. There were maybe 30 people there, miners mostly. Old men with lined faces and missing fingers who shook my hand and said, "Your grandfather was a good man," and they meant it in a way that had nothing to do with money or status or anything the world uses to measure a person's worth. After the service, a man approached me, small, wiry, in his late 50s at the time, wearing a suit. That was slightly too big, like he'd bought it for a version of himself that ate more regularly. "Marshall Dalton?" "Yes, sir." "My name is Harlan Creech. I was your grandfather's attorney." I didn't know my grandfather had an attorney. As far as I knew, he had a pension, a house, 40 acres of hillside, and a truck that should have been in a museum. "Your grandfather left a will," Harlan said. "But it's not a standard document. There are provisions in it that are, well, unusual. The estate has been sealed by your grandfather's instruction. It's not to be opened for some time." "Sealed? What does that mean?" "It means I can't tell you anything else right now. When the time comes, I'll find you." He handed me a card. "Keep this. You'll need it one day." I put the card in my wallet and forgot about it. I was 23, had just started working in HVAC, was dating a girl named Jolene Whitfield, who laughed at my jokes and made me feel like maybe my father leaving wasn't the defining event of my life. I didn't have time to think about sealed wills and unusual provisions. I married Jolene in August of 2013. The wedding was at her parents' church in Maryville, Tennessee. White dress, sweating groomsmen, a reception in the fellowship hall with a DJ who played too much country and not enough Motown. I was 27. She was 25. I thought we'd be together forever because that's what you think when you're 27 and in love and too young to know that forever is a word people use when they haven't been tested yet. The first years were good. Not perfect, but good. Shepard was born in June of 2015, and when the doctor put that boy in my arms, I made a promise to myself and to God and to whatever was left of Amos Dalton's spirit that I would never, ever be Ray Dalton. I would never walk out. I would never disappear. I would be there every morning and every night and every moment in between. Wren came in January of 2018. My daughter, an octa-6, pounds, 11 ounces, with a cry that could shatter glass and a grip on my finger that could stop my heart. 2 kids, a growing business, a house on Westland Drive that we bought with an FHA loan and a prayer. Life was full, exhausting, but full. The trouble started in 2021. Not with a fight, not with a discovery, not with any single event I could point to and say that's where it broke. It was slower than that, like a pipe that freezes and cracks during the winter but doesn't leak until the thaw. Jolene started making comments about money, about the house, about the neighbors' vacations and her co-workers' husbands, and the life she imagined she should be living versus the life she was actually living. Megan's husband just got promoted. They're going to Cancun for 2 weeks. That's nice. Must be nice to take a real vacation. We haven't been anywhere since Wren was born. Business has been slow this quarter, Jolene. You know that. Business is always slow, Marshall. That's the problem. It got worse. The comments became arguments. The arguments became silence. The silence became something colder than silence. A kind of studied indifference, like I was a piece of furniture she had to walk around but didn't have to acknowledge. By 2023, we were roommates with a shared mortgage and 2 children who deserved better than the tension they were growing up in. I suggested counseling. She said she didn't need a stranger telling her what she already knew. I asked what she already knew. She said she was unhappy and it was my fault. I found out about Trent Kinsley in September of 2023. Not through detective work or surveillance or anything dramatic. I found out because Shepard told me, "Dad, who's the man who comes over when you're at work?" I was giving him a bath. He was 8, old enough to notice things, young enough to not know he shouldn't say them out loud. "What man, buddy?" "The tall one. He has a big truck. He watches TV with Mom sometimes. Wren calls him Mr. Trent." I kept my voice steady, kept washing his hair, kept being his father, because that's what Amos would have done. You don't fall apart in front of your children. You hold the walls up even when the roof is coming down. I'm sure he's just a friend of Mom's, don't worry about it. But I did worry about it. I worried about it the way a man worries about a sound in his engine that wasn't there yesterday. A ticking, a grinding, something wrong in the machinery of his life that he can hear but can't yet see. I didn't confront Jolene. I should have, but I didn't. Because part of me already knew what was happening, and confronting it meant admitting that the life I'd built, the life I'd promised myself I'd never lose, was already gone. The ultimatum came on a Saturday morning in January 2024. The kids were at Jolene's parents' house for the weekend. Jolene was sitting at the kitchen table with a manila folder in front of her. She'd made coffee, 2 cups, one for her, one for me, like this was a business meeting. "Sit down, Marshall." I sat. She slid the folder across the table. "These are divorce papers. I've already talked to a lawyer. I want the house, the savings, and the business." "The business?" "Jolene, I built that company from nothing. That's my livelihood. And this is my home, the kids' home. You can start over. You're good with your hands. You'll find work. You want everything. What do I get?" "You get to see your kids every other weekend." "Every other weekend?" "I'm their father, Jolene. I'm there every single night. I read them stories. I drive them to school. I coach Shepard's baseball team. And I'm their mother. And if you don't sign these papers, I will go to that courthouse on Monday morning, and I will tell the judge that you are an angry, unstable man who I am afraid of. I will file a protection order. I will take the kids, and you will spend the next 2 years fighting in court while I make sure they forget what your voice sounds like." She said it calmly, without raising her voice, without blinking, like she had rehearsed it in front of a mirror until the words lost their weight and became just sounds, just tools, just the combination to a lock she needed to open. I stared at her. At this woman I had married, this woman I had loved, this woman who was now threatening to erase me from my children's lives with the casual efficiency of someone crossing items off a grocery list. "You wouldn't. Try me. This isn't right, Jolene. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, Marshall. You of all people should know that. Your daddy taught you that lesson when you were 4. That was the line that broke me. Not because it was cruel, although it was, but because she had taken the deepest wound of my life, the wound I had trusted her with, the wound I had shown her in the early days of our love when I believed she would handle it gently, and she had turned it into a weapon. I signed the papers, every page, every line, every initialed clause. I signed away the house on Westland Drive, the savings account with $62,000 in it, the HVAC company I had built over 10 years, and my right to be a daily presence in my children's lives. I signed because the threat of losing Shepard and Wren entirely was worse than losing everything else. I signed because I remembered what it felt like to be a 4-year-old boy whose father didn't come home, and I would rather live in a cardboard box than make my children feel that absence. "Smart choice," Jolene said, collecting the papers. She didn't thank me, didn't acknowledge what I had just given up. Just tapped the pages into a neat stack and slid them back into the folder like she was filing an insurance claim. I packed 2 bags that afternoon. Clothes, toiletries, the framed photo of me and Amos on his porch from the summer I was 12, and my grandfather's old Carhartt jacket, the one with no lining, the shell that had outlasted everything inside it. I loaded them into my truck and drove away from the house I had painted, roofed, and rewired with my own hands. Bo Timmons let me sleep on his couch for 2 weeks. Bo was 40, fellow HVAC tech, the kind of friend who opens his door at 10 o'clock at night, sees you standing there with 2 bags, and a face like the world just ended and says, "Couches on the left. Beer's in the fridge. We'll talk about it when you're ready." We never talked about it. Bo wasn't that kind of friend. He was the kind who just showed up, made sure I ate, drove me to work when my truck needed a belt replaced and I couldn't afford the part. That kind of friendship is worth more than anything Jolene took from me. After 2 weeks, I found the room above the laundromat. $350 a month, utilities included, which meant a single bulb in the ceiling, a radiator that worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the constant hum of commercial dryers vibrating through the floor. Mrs. Hernandez, the owner, was a small woman from Guatemala who spoke limited English and unlimited kindness. She knocked on my door the first night with a plate of tamales and said, "You eat too skinny." That room became my world. Mattress on the floor. Mini fridge that I bought used from a guy on Facebook Marketplace for $30. A hot plate that Mrs. Hernandez pretended not to know about because it violated the lease. The auto parts calendar on the wall. And the photo of Amos and me on the porch, taped to the wall next to the window where the morning light hit it just right. I worked. That's all I did. 12-hour shifts at Volunteer Air Systems, the same company I used to take clients from when I ran my own shop. My boss, a man named Dale Furman, had the good grace to never mention it. He just handed me work orders and let me do my job. I was the best technician he had, and we both knew it. And the fact that I was making $16 an hour doing work I used to charge $85 an hour for was a humiliation we both pretended didn't exist. Every other weekend, I was supposed to see Shepard and Wren. That was the agreement, Saturday morning to Sunday evening. But Jolene found ways to make it difficult. Shepard has a stomach bug. Wren has a birthday party. The kids are at my parents' house. It's too far for you to drive. Excuse after excuse, weekend after weekend, until the 2 days a month I was legally entitled to became 1 day, then half a day, then nothing. I called. I texted. I sent letters through my lawyer, a legal aid attorney who was doing his best with a caseload the size of a phone book and a client who couldn't afford to pay him. Jolene responded to every complaint with the same defense, the children's best interests. She was protecting them. From what, she never specified. From me, apparently. From their father, who had never raised his voice to them, never missed a school event, never been anything but present and steady and there. The hardest night was in November, 11 months into the laundromat year. I was lying on my mattress, listening to the dryers below, staring at the photo of Amos on the wall. My phone rang, Shepard's number. Jolene had given him an old phone for emergencies. "Dad? Hey, buddy, it's late. You okay?" "I miss you." His voice was small, the kind of small that breaks something inside you that can never be fully repaired. "When are you coming home?" "I'm working on it, Shep, I promise. Mr. Trent moved in. He sleeps in your spot in the bed." I closed my eyes, pressed the phone against my forehead, breathed. "I know, buddy. I don't like him. He's loud. And he changed the channel when I was watching my show and said it was his house now. Listen to me, Shepard. That is your house. Yours and Wren's. No one can change that, and I'm going to be back. I don't know when, but I'm going to be back. Do you believe me?" "Yeah." "Say it. I believe you, Dad." "Good. Now go to sleep. I love you." "Love you too." I hung up, lay there in the dark. The dryers rumbled below, the radiator clicked, and I thought about Amos Dalton, who went into a hole in the ground every day for nearly 50 years and came back up every night because that's what you do. You go down, you come back up, you go down again, you keep coming back up until you don't have to anymore. 13 days later, someone knocked on my door. It was a Tuesday morning, early February 2025. I was getting ready for work, standing in front of the bathroom mirror that was small enough to only show my face from the nose up, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Not loud, not urgent, deliberate. The knock of a man who had come a long way and wasn't in a hurry. I opened the door. The man on the other side was in his early 70s, thin, weathered, wearing a suit that fit better than the last time I'd seen it. Because I had seen it before, 16 years ago, at a cemetery on a hillside in Harlan County. "Mr. Dalton? Mr. Creech?" He smiled. It was the tired, satisfied smile of a man who had kept a promise for a very long time. "May I come in? I have something to tell you. Something your grandfather wanted you to hear." I stepped aside. Harlan Creech walked into my room above the laundromat, looked at the mattress on the floor, the hot plate, the mini fridge, the photo of Amos taped to the wall, and I saw something move across his face. Pain, maybe, or anger, or the particular sadness of a man who knows that the person he's looking at has been through hell and doesn't deserve any of it. "Sit down, Marshall." I sat on the mattress. He took the only chair, a folding metal thing I'd found by a dumpster behind the Dollar General. "Your grandfather's estate has been unsealed." "Unsealed? You said that at the funeral. What does that mean?" "It means that 16 years ago your grandfather gave me very specific instructions. His will was not to be executed immediately upon his death. It was to be sealed, held in trust, and opened exactly 16 years later. That date was last month, January 2025. Why 16 years? Several reasons, and I'll explain them all. But first, I need to tell you what your grandfather left behind, because it's not what you think." Harlan reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather folder, old, cracked, the kind of thing Amos would have owned. "Your grandfather was a coal mine foreman. That's what everyone knew. What no one knew, not even your father, not even your mother, was that starting in the 1960s, Amos began purchasing mineral rights on land throughout Harlan County and the surrounding areas." Mineral rights? The right to extract whatever's under the ground. Coal, natural gas, timber in some cases. Amos used his knowledge of the mines to identify which parcels of land sat on top of productive seams. He bought the rights cheap from families who didn't know what they had, from estates being settled, from landowners who only cared about the surface. How much land are we talking about? Over 2,200 acres across 3 counties. I stared at him. "He never mined them himself," Harlan continued. "He leased them to coal companies and collected royalty checks. Those checks went into accounts no one knew about. He lived the same way he always lived. Same house, same truck, same jacket." "Mr. Creech, what are you telling me?" He set down a document on the mattress beside me. "Your grandfather's estate is valued at approximately $8.3 million. The number didn't make sense. It was like someone telling you the sky is green. You hear the words, you understand the language, but the meaning refuses to land. "The mineral rights alone are worth over $4 million, Harlan said. They still generate approximately $340,000 a year in royalty income. There's also the 40 acres in Harlan, which has appreciated significantly. Cash accounts accumulated over 5 decades, and a portfolio of stocks he purchased through a broker in the 1980s, blue chips, the kind of companies that split and split again. $8 million. 8.3 approximately. My grandfather, the man who reused aluminum foil, the very same." I looked at the photo on the wall. Amos on his porch, overalls, no smile, those dark hands resting on his knees. $8.3 million, and he lived like a monk in a hollow in Harlan County, Kentucky. Why did he seal it for 16 years? Harlan leaned forward. 3 reasons. First, your father. Amos loved Ray, but he knew what Ray was. An addict, irresponsible, the kind of man who would burn through a fortune in a year and blame everyone else for the ashes. The 16-year seal ensured that the statute of limitations on contesting the will in Kentucky would expire. Ray can never touch this money. And the second reason? You. When Amos died, you were 23, young, unmarried, just starting out. He didn't want you to have this kind of money before you knew who you were. He wanted you to build something with your own hands first, to become a man on your own terms, not on his money. I thought about the HVAC company, the years of crawling under houses in August heat, the calluses, the burns, the 16-hour days. I had built something, and then I had lost it, but I had built it. And the third reason? Harlan's expression changed, became harder, more deliberate. The third reason is why I'm here today, sitting in this room, looking at a mattress on the floor and a man eating ramen for dinner. He paused. Your grandfather anticipated this. Anticipated what? This. Exactly this. A Dalton man losing everything to someone who didn't deserve it. Because it happened before. In 1934, during the Depression, Amos's father lost his land, his house, everything he had, to a woman who married him, for stability and left him when the mines closed. Amos was 9 years old. He watched his father break down, watched him drink himself to death by 40. And he swore, Marshall, he swore on that man's grave that no Dalton would ever be left with nothing again. Harlan pulled out another document. This is the clause your ex-wife never saw coming. I took the paper, read it slowly. Your grandfather's will contains a clawback provision, Harlan explained. It states that if any assets you lost in a divorce, business, property, savings, anything, were taken through coercion, fraud, or under duress, the estate's legal team is authorized and fully funded by the estate to pursue complete recovery of those assets on your behalf. Funded by the estate. Every dollar of legal fees, every filing, every court appearance. Your grandfather earmarked $500,000 specifically for litigation, and he instructed me to retain the best attorneys I could find. He set this up 16 years ago. He set this up because he knew the world, Marshall. He knew that good men get taken advantage of. He knew that the kind of man who would rather lose everything than lose his children is exactly the kind of man who needs someone fighting in his corner. Harlan looked at me. Your grandfather's fighting in your corner. 16 years late, but he's here. I couldn't speak. I was sitting on a mattress on the floor of a room above a laundromat, holding a document worth $8 million, and the man who had given it to me had been dead for 16 years and had still somehow known exactly when I would need it. There's one more requirement, Harlan said. Before the estate is fully transferred, the will requires a forensic audit of your financial history. If the audit reveals that assets were taken through coercion or bad faith, the estate will fund litigation to recover everything. Everything? The house, the company, the savings, everything she took. Mr. Creech, she threatened me. She said she'd tell the court I was abusive. She said I'd never see my kids again. Do you have evidence of that? I have text messages. She sent me the threat in writing 2 days before I signed. I kept it. I kept everything. Harlan Creech closed his briefcase and looked at the photo of Amos on the wall one more time. I've been managing your grandfather's affairs for 16 years, waiting for this day. I hired a skip tracer to find your current address last month. When he told me you were living above a laundromat, eating ramen, working for $16 an hour after losing your own company, he stopped, composed himself. Amos would have burned this building down and carried you out himself. Then we have work to do. 2 weeks later, I was sitting across from Nadine Sorrell in her office on Gay Street in downtown Knoxville. Nadine was 45, former prosecutor, the kind of attorney who wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck and smiled like a woman who enjoyed winning the way other people enjoyed breathing. Let me make sure I understand this, she said, flipping through the documents Harlan had provided. Your grandfather, a coal mine foreman from Harlan County, secretly amassed an estate worth $8.3 million, sealed his will for 16 years, and included a funded clawback provision specifically designed to recover assets taken from you in a coerced divorce. Yes. And your ex-wife forced you to sign a settlement under threat of false abuse allegations and permanent loss of custody. Yes. And you have the text messages proving the threat. On my phone. Screenshots backed up to 2 separate email accounts. Nadine took off her glasses. Mr. Dalton, I've been practicing family law for 19 years. I have never seen a case this clean. She put the glasses back on. We're going to get everything back, the house, the company, the savings, and we're going to revisit custody. How long? The forensic audit will take 4 to 5 weeks, filing the motion to vacate the settlement shortly after. If she fights it, and she will, we could be in court by summer. And the cost? Covered by the estate, every penny. Your grandfather made sure of that. I nodded. Then let's start. The forensic audit was completed in 5 weeks. The findings were devastating for Jolene. The auditors documented that the HVAC company, valued at approximately $180,000 at the time of the divorce, had been listed in the settlement at $45,000. Jolene's attorney had used a lowball appraisal from a friend of Trent Kinsley's who wasn't even a certified business appraiser. The savings account had contained $62,000, but bank records showed that Jolene had withdrawn $18,000 in the 3 months before filing, moving it to a personal account she didn't disclose. And the text messages, Nadine printed them, enlarged them, and stapled them to the front of the filing like a wanted poster. January 11th, 2024, 11:47 p.m. from Jolene. If you don't sign tomorrow, I'm going to the courthouse Monday. I'll tell them you grabbed me. I'll tell them you screamed at the kids. I have witnesses. Rachel and my mom will both testify. Don't test me, Marshall. January 12th, 2024, 6:23 a.m. from Jolene. Last chance. Sign or lose them forever. Your choice. Nadine filed the motion to vacate the divorce settlement on April 2nd, 2025. Jolene was served at the dental office where she worked. Her co-workers watched the process server hand her the envelope, and by the end of the day the entire office knew. She called me that night, first time in months. "What is this, Marshall? What are you doing?" "I'm correcting a mistake. You signed those papers. You agreed." "Under threat, Jolene, under duress, and I have the text to prove it." Silence. "Where did you get a lawyer? You can barely afford to eat." "That's not your concern anymore." "Marshall, if you think you can just come back and take everything—" "I'm not taking anything. I'm recovering what was mine. There's a difference." More silence, then quieter. "Where's this coming from? You don't have this kind of fight in you. You'd be surprised what a year above a laundromat teaches a man." She hung up. The next time I saw Jolene's face was in court. She had hired an attorney, a decent one from Maryville, but decent wasn't enough. Nadine Sorrell was a force of nature. She presented the text messages. She presented the fraudulent business appraisal. She presented the hidden bank withdrawals. She presented the timeline showing that Trent Kinsley had been staying overnight at the Westland Drive house 3 months before the divorce was even filed, based on neighbor statements and Shepard's own description of the man who watched TV with Mom. Jolene's attorney tried to argue that the settlement was voluntary, that I had signed willingly, that I had legal representation at the time. Nadine read the text messages out loud. "Sign or lose them forever. Your choice." She let the words sit in the courtroom for a full 10 seconds before continuing. "Your Honor, this is textbook coercion. Mr. Dalton signed under explicit threat of fabricated abuse allegations and permanent loss of access to his minor children. The settlement was not voluntary. It was extortion." The judge vacated the settlement in its entirety. The house was awarded to me as part of the restitution order, given that Jolene had obtained it through coercion and had allowed a third party to occupy it during the proceedings. The HVAC company was returned to my name. The savings were ordered repaid, and custody was revisited. Jolene lost primary custody. Not because the judge wanted to punish her, but because the pattern of behavior, the coercion, the withheld visitation, the false characterization of me as unstable, painted a picture of a parent who used children as leverage rather than loving them as people. I was awarded primary custody of Shepard and Wren. Jolene received visitation every other weekend, the same schedule she had given me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. 2 weeks after the ruling, I drove to the house on Westland Drive to pick up the kids. Trent Kinsley's lifted truck was in the driveway next to a moving van. They were packing. I knocked on the door. Trent answered. He was wearing my old bathrobe, the blue one Jolene had bought me 3 Christmases ago. He looked at me with the dull hostility of a man who knows he's lost but hasn't figured out how to leave yet. "Kids are getting their stuff," he said. "Thanks. Nice truck." He nodded at the new F-150 in the driveway. Business must be picking up. I didn't respond, didn't owe him a conversation, didn't owe him anything. Shepard came running out first. "Dad." He hit me at full speed, arms around my waist, face buried in my chest. 9 years old, and holding on like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Hey, buddy. Is it true? Are we coming to live with you? Yeah, Shep, it's true. Where? Right here. This house. Our house. We're coming home. Wren came out next, carrying a backpack almost as big as she was. 7 years old now, quiet, watchful, the kind of child who absorbs everything and says very little. She walked up to me, looked up with her mother's eyes and her great-grandfather's stubbornness, and said, I packed my own bag. I can see that, baby girl. Is Mr. Trent going away? Yes. Good. I loaded their bags into the truck. Shepard climbed in the back. Wren took the front seat, which she wasn't supposed to do, but I let it slide because some rules don't apply on the day you get your children back. As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror. Jolene was standing in the doorway, watching. She didn't wave, didn't shout, just stood there, arms crossed, watching her children leave in their father's truck, and I wondered if she understood yet what she had lost. Not the house, not the money, not the things. She had lost the right to be the center of their world, and no settlement, no attorney, no amount of scheming could get that back. 3 months have passed since the court ruling. It's July 2025. The Tennessee summer is brutal, the kind of heat that wraps around you like a wet blanket the moment you step outside, and I've never been happier to sweat through a work shirt. Shepard and Wren are home. That word means something again. Home. The house on Westland Drive, freshly painted, the rooms rearranged, the traces of Trent Kinsley scrubbed from every surface. Shepard's baseball trophies are back on his shelf. Wren's drawings are back on the refrigerator. The kitchen smells like pancakes in the morning instead of resentment. I reopened Dalton Climate Solutions. The company was in bad shape when I got it back. Jolene hadn't run it, so much as let it bleed out. 3 major contracts lost. 2 of my best technicians gone to competitors, the truck fleet behind on maintenance. But the name was still good. The reputation I'd built over 10 years was still there, buried under a year of neglect, but not destroyed. Bo Timmons was the first person I called. You want your old job back? I never left your old job. I was just keeping your seat warm at volunteer. He paused. What's the pay? More than $16 an hour. I'm in. Last month, I drove to Harlan, Kentucky. First time since Amos's funeral. I took the mountain roads, the winding 2 lanes through the Daniel Boone National Forest, where the trees grow so thick they block the sky. I drove past the mining operations, past the hollows where families have lived for generations, past the Baptist church where they buried my grandfather on a hillside with 30 miners standing in the rain. I parked at Amos's house. The clapboard was weathered, the porch sagging, the 40 acres overgrown with wild rhododendron and old-growth hickory, but the bones were good. The foundation was solid, just like everything Amos built. I sat on his porch, in the same spot where he used to sit with his coffee in the mornings, watching the mist rise out of the hollow. I was wearing his Carhartt jacket, the one with no lining, the shell that had outlasted everything inside it. And I thought about what he'd done. Not the money, not the mineral rights or the stocks or the sealed will or the clawback provision. I thought about the fact that a man who worked underground for nearly 50 years, who never saw the sun during the winter months, who breathed coal dust until his lungs turned black, had somehow looked far enough into the future to see a grandson he hadn't met yet, sitting on a mattress above a laundromat, eating ramen, losing everything, and had said, "Not on my watch." 16 years after his death, Amos Dalton reached into my life and pulled me out of that room. Gave me back my company, my home, my children, my dignity, not because I deserved it, not because I earned it, because he loved me. And because love, real love, the kind that's built in coal dust and silence and calloused hands, doesn't stop working just because the person who built it stops breathing. Shepard asked me last week about the photo on the wall, the one I'd taped up in the laundromat room and now have framed in the living room on Westland Drive. Who's that man, Dad? That's your great-grandfather, Amos Dalton. The one with the money? The one who saved us? What was he like? I looked at my son, saw Amos in his jaw, in his eyes, in the way he held his hands when he was concentrating on something. He was the kind of man who goes into the dark every day and comes back up every night, and he did it for nearly 50 years. Not because he liked it, because the people he loved were waiting for him at the top. Shepard thought about that. Is that why you kept going? When you lived above the laundromat? Yeah, buddy, that's exactly why. Because we were waiting? Because you were waiting. He leaned against me, didn't say anything else. Some things don't need more words. I'm standing in my shop right now, Dalton Climate Solutions. The sign is back up, freshly painted. 4 trucks in the lot, a 5th on order. Bo is in the back, arguing with the new hire about the proper way to braze a copper fitting. Shepard is sitting on an overturned bucket, sorting bolts into jars, the way I used to sort them for Amos on summer afternoons in Harlan County. My hands are dirty. My back aches. There's a service call in 30 minutes and the parts haven't arrived yet. But the doors are open. The name is on the building. My son is 10 feet away. And somewhere in the hills of eastern Kentucky, on 40 acres of land I now own, there's a porch with an empty chair where a man used to sit and watch the mist rise, knowing that everything he'd built would hold. It held, Amos. Everything you built, it held. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever signed away everything you had because someone threatened to take your children? Have you ever lived in a room you wouldn't wish on anyone and kept getting up every morning anyway? Have you ever been at rock bottom, flat broke, eating 39-cent ramen, and had someone reach across time, across death, across 16 years of silence, and pull you back to your feet? And if no one has yet, are you still waiting? Because sometimes the help comes late. Sometimes it comes from someone you lost a long time ago. But it comes. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you in a place you don't talk about, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's in their laundromat year right now.
A much higher level than my level in French. And that's what makes having the motivation so important. The good thing about motivation is it will help you in the beginning stages to get to the intermediate stages. But after you get to the higher levels of English, where you can read books, understand TV shows, and you can enjoy English more, then you don't need as much motivation. Because now it's fun, and now you can just watch a TV show or watch a movie, watch a YouTube video, read a book, and then your English will just get better and better and better without you even trying. But in the beginning, when studying isn't fun and you don't understand anything, then motivation is extremely important to get to the next level where you can start enjoying English. Because it's in the beginning stages where most people give up. They try to learn English, it's just too hard, it feels impossible, and so they give up. And so having motivation in this stage is really important. Okay, so with that being said, let's get to the first way to improve your motivation. And way number 1 is to create a heaven and hell scenario. Now, I know saying heaven and hell is a bit extreme, but I'm using those words because they are extreme, and I want to help you remember this technique. So first, let's create your heaven. Your heaven is 3 years from now, and you have been studying English, and now you know English. Imagine you could, make friends in English. When you travel, you're able to talk to the people around you in English. If you go with a group, maybe